Hello, everyone, and welcome to your next CoLS session from Data Magician to Data Coach with your speaker, Yeri Kumala. This is a really exciting talk, and it's all about how we connect with our stakeholders when we're doing data work. Because as much as the work is pulling the data and getting the data out there, it's also making sure that people understand it, they know how to use it, and it connects with them. And Yeri is going to walk us through some of the tips of doing that. And a fun fact about Yeri is that we've talked a lot about polyglots at this conference, but Yeri's a true polyglot, speaking several languages, and in fact, growing up across seven different countries and 10 schools. So a true international scholar here to tell us about working with our data stakeholders.
All right, I'm excited to be here and to tell you about some stuff that I really like. So I'm sure you're wondering why Data Magician to Data Coach. So before we really dig into it, I'm going to tell you what I really mean by that. So a lot of us are used to, like when we get a data problem or a data question, to immediately start thinking about how I'm going to solve this. You know your data limitations, you start thinking about like what exists, what doesn't exist, you start mapping it out. Maybe you start having conversations with your stakeholder being anyone that's asked you that question, right? But then you become the primary owner to solving that problem. And what I want to do is have us shift how we think about data problems and start making sure that we create shared responsibility. And so that means shifting from being a magician to a data coach. So what do I really mean by that? It's really talking about reframing how you engage with your stakeholders when thinking about data questions. So instead of going from, I can solve this for you, and hopefully whatever I generate is something that will be useful to you, based on my understanding, you're going to, let me coach you through really understanding your data landscape, right, and how to use what exists to answer your question strategically. But also, it also allows for creating more awareness about what's available to them, but what's realistic and what's unrealistic, which is the big part about our role, right? People want everything. So before I really start talking about my framework and the kind of questions that I want to share with you all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, which will give you context about how I think about these problems. One thing is that I feel like it's a superpower. I have the ability to do a lot with very little, and so something that if you're in the startup field, you understand, right? Or even like more extensive organizations. But for me right now, the reality means I operate with very limited sleep because I have 2 little kids. I wake up really early, stay up late, yeah, chaos, but I still function, right? Means a lot of coffee. Second piece is I love getting people excited about data. So I see myself a little bit as a data translator, and I want everyone to be as excited about it and understand the power of data in the same way that I do, right? And the third piece, which is more what I was, not necessarily anymore, but I was a Division I track and field athlete in undergrad. So what that meant was my days were spent just training to be the best athlete that I could be, right? Clear goals, consistent training, competing, always competing, but also learning how to readjust when I wasn't getting the results that I needed to see. So that gives you a sense of why I'm thinking about this in terms of a data coaching perspective. It's also, in addition to being an athlete, like one of the things that it taught me and then I carried over in my professional and personal life is also getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, which is something that I think we need to get used to doing with the people that we work with. So I'll start off with this particular stat. 80% of analytics insight will not deliver outcomes. This is something that I read from a book earlier this year called the Self-Service Data Roadmap. And it's based off a study led by Gartner. And for me, it really resonated. Sadly, I'm a little jaded, probably. But it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, sometimes I feel almost everyone in this room has probably gotten a request where you spent a lot of time digging into it, and then you give it to your stakeholder, and you have no idea exactly how they used it, right? You're like, this is great, but I don't really know what decisions were made out of this. I don't really know how big of a result it generated. And that's just a reality of where we're in. And a lot of the companies that we work with or work in are inundated with data. But that doesn't mean that they always know how to really use it to strategically answer questions about their business, or even just think outside the box, right? Be really creative with using what they have. They're always thinking about like what they would like. But what about what you have right now that you can really use? So we're going to dig into what I hope you get out of this talk. So today the goal is understand what I mean by getting to know your stakeholder. So I have a few ideas around that. I'll define the role of a data coach in the way that I think of it. And that I hope by the end of the talk you have a sense of what that means for you in your current role and your current reality. So, step one, understanding your stakeholder. So before I dig into that, I'll tell you a little story from my previous role. I worked at Firefly Health, where that's where I discovered the power of DBT. So forever grateful for that opportunity. Some of my stakeholders came to me and they're like, Yuri, it feels like engagement is going down. Really want to figure out like what's going on so that we can increase it. Like, you know. And you're like, I think some of you will guess the first question. I was like, what does engagement mean? Like, what is engagement? How do you define it, right? Everyone defined it a little differently. And that's important, like really drilling into it. And so that, for me, I'm going to use that to frame some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. So when I talk about understanding your stakeholders, like understanding exactly where they're coming from, how you can influence them, and how you can, like with this idea of impact, you know, by truly understanding them, how you can generate the right kind of impact from your work. Step one, assessment. So for the engagement piece, for that particular example, I knew that my colleagues had done a lot of work around building data models that captured this idea of like how often we engage with our patients. There were also like reports, and it depended on what part of the business you were sitting in. So it was like, so my first question was like, what's your driver, right? Like, why is this important? Some people are thinking about like, it needs to look good for senior leadership. This other person's like, we want to use it for marketing, right? Like this other person. So you start really drilling into this idea of like, what's really important here? So dig into like, how do they currently use the data? What are they aware of? Like, what do they really understand? Right? What kind of data user are they? Are they a passive one? So only for reporting, when really needed, when the board is meeting, whatever it is, really understanding that part. Or is it like, are they going to really use it to drive decision making? Relationship with data. Is data their friend or foe? I think that's just a reality everywhere you are. There are a lot of people who just do not trust the numbers, whatever the numbers mean. And some people love it, but that means they're also extremely opinionated about what they are willing to consume and also willing to ignore, right? So really understanding how they think about data is important. For the engagement example, for example, they were open-minded. Some people had their own definitions of what engagement was, but they had no idea how we captured it, right? They're like, we interact a lot with our patients, and it means different things for different people, and we want to make sure that senior leadership really understands what that means, right? But we also want to know exactly what we need to act on. Next piece, goals. This is the big one. For me, it's like, how are you defining success? We all have assumptions about what impact, and I put that in quotation, really means. But it's like, what do you want to use what you're generating for? Is it for a decision, right? Like, is it to inform? Is it just a nice to have? Like, so really drilling and like helping them focus. But understand where they're coming from. And one of the key things there is like, as data practitioners, we also have assumptions of where we think they're going. So we need to step away from that and really think about like, where do they think they're going versus what I think, right? And that's the shift also. Roadmap. And what do I mean by roadmap? This is the idea of like shared ownership. They need to start taking the time to understand what's available to them. So it's like, this is what we have. What kinds of questions, these are the kinds of questions you can answer with what we have. And if you want something new, that's fine. but also helping them understand how long it takes probably to generate a brand new data product. People expect like things to happen overnight, and there's this dissatisfaction, right, that we're not moving fast enough or we're not as responsive. But a big part of it is education, and it's this reframing of how we work with them. It's like, yeah, you also have a responsibility to start understanding where we're at, right? And I'll coach you through it. I'll support you through it, but it's an awareness. So shifting away from understanding your stakeholder, I'm going to go into defining the role of a data coach. So for me, it's this idea of they help you, they coach you towards a goal, so really identifying what's important for the now. They help you focus on the right things at the right time. They hold you accountable, so there's a way of really thinking about, it's not just you delivering, but are they going to use it the way that you intended? And if not, who within your org has the level of influence to hold them accountable if it's not you? You have to start having these honest conversations, which is like, it was supposed to be used for a decision, never heard back, have no idea what happened. Whose responsibility is it to really understand what's happening with it? Otherwise, I mean, we're an expensive resource at the end of the day. So it is important to start like really generating that knowledge and understanding on how we're doing stuff. And it means having these hard conversations. And we need to push them outside the comfort zone. That means sometimes they'll ask you a question that just doesn't make sense, right? In theory, it's like, yeah, it's great, that's what the industry is saying. But for how we're structured, you might have an idea of how to get to that answer a little differently. And that's your job, to start pushing and finding ways. And that takes time, granted, but it's an important thing to start considering. We have ownership there, too. So let's dig into this. Get into the goal. The three things I want you to really think about is defining. So what is success here? Where do you want to get to? And that is something that you do with your stakeholder, is how I look at it. You sit down, you really start having that shared understanding. Prioritizing is this idea of like, help them focus on the right thing. Now this can get a little complicated depending on how you're organized, because it also leans into this data strategy piece that I outlined over here. What do I mean? Some organizations have like a clear data strategy, right? They have a vision of where they're going and how they're building up their data infrastructure and systems. Some don't. They're just swimming, which is fine, but that's what resonates with them in the now. But resources and how you think about your work and what's important to the company is determined by the focus. Could be dictated by leadership, by your data team, like where time needs to be invested. And so you need to straddle that. You need to think about that when you're prioritizing too, because that's how things just keep getting bumped down the queue, right? Because it's just not top of mind for everyone. It's not that it's not important, it's just not a priority. So helping them focus on the right thing, either how they can align with some of the already existing requests, how you can build from things that already exist, that reduces the amount of time and investment you're going to take, and leaning in what exists versus having created something brand new when not needed. Getting to impact, the accountability piece. This is the coaching piece. Focus, focus, focus. You don't start doing things that don't really get you to the results. You focus on like the right things, right? Which is what I talked about just previously. But who's accountable for what? You're here to push. You can deliver. You can build amazing insights and data products. But there needs to be an accountability piece. And you can define it based on what makes sense for your company. But for me, in my opinion, it's like, is this being used in the way that it was intended? Like the way the request was originated? And how do you call that out when it's not? What's the flow? What's the system? What's the communication? Or how are you capturing it consistently? So if you're not yet having the conversation, are you keeping track of it? Do you know when you know what's happening and when you don't, and why, right? So digging into that a little bit. Managing expectations. You gotta be realistic with what's possible now and what's possible later, based on your current tools, infrastructure, and all of that. We get excited about new data questions and data problems. That's the fun part of the job, but it's not always realistic. And there are a lot of time constraints, and so it's being able to determine, like, all right, this is like a 6-month or a year project. Are you ready for that, right? Like, and how do you make sure that you stay on track? And then this other stuff is like, It's priority, so it's always going to bump the other stuff down. Innovation. What I mean by innovation is not new tools or new approaches. It's really just how do you get creative with using what is available to you, asking new kinds of questions, pushing your stakeholders to think outside the box a little bit more, which is like, yeah, this is nice, but there's something really unique about our data set. And that could be, like, what's the data story that you want to tell? What really sets you apart? How are you pushing your stakeholders and your team to lean in what's unique about your data that you're collecting and the kinds of questions that you're asking? And that, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's easy to forget that there is something special, right, about your data and how you think about data, because these are based off of your opinions and your thoughts around, like, why you're structuring things a certain way. So this is all nice, but reality check, right? We can't do all of that all the time. Not going to happen. Nobody really has all the time in the world to always do this. So my challenge to you is to start small. Know your strengths. You start with where you're really strong, and you find allies. The idea is it's like a muscle that you need to exercise. It takes practice and it takes time. But the biggest thing with this is consistency. In reality, you choose one piece, and then people start anticipating how you're going to approach them about certain data problems. Not everyone's going to be receptive to this framework or way of approaching their data questions, or slowing them down, for that matter. But if you're consistent in how you drill into things, they start getting used to it. So I'll give you an example. Previous role, one of the things that I really was known for was asking the whys. So really digging into what is it that you're really trying to do? What exactly, how are you going to use this? And why do you think it's important? So by having I had my set of questions, and I would come, and they knew it would be a conversation. And it wasn't that it wasn't going to get done, but it forced them to really think, like, do I really want to spend this time answering this question? Is it really that important? If you need it tomorrow, why did you wait last minute? But it's also like, what is it supposed to inform? Is it just for a report that is not going to lead to any action or decision? It's just, for it to look good, which is important to know too. There's a place for that. But it's more like thinking about how are you going to use it, and how do we make sure that we're looking at the right thing? Because sometimes you can't do it all. So what's that one thing you really, really need? Right now, I'm at SeatGeek, and it's a very data-rich company with a lot of data tools, which also means that people are opinionated about data and how they want to consume it, right? And what they're willing to ignore. When you're data-rich, comes at a cost also. And so for me right now, my priority from a data coaching perspective is really understanding people's relationships with data. I feel like by really understand how things are used, why they're used, or why they're not used, it'll help me be more effective, especially as I'm getting to get to know a new org. And so these are all my general insights. I think a big piece is like really defining this idea of what is that one thing I can take away that I can try and consistently do across all projects, small or big, just to get in the habit of having a framework for like how you manage and work with stakeholders and how you define impact and success, not just for yourself, but also for like your team and the company. And with that, I will leave you with a video, a testimonial from someone I worked with. So let's see if this is going to work. And I'm going to ask for sound check.
My name is Audrey. I work as a clinical program manager at our plan. As a clinical program manager, it's my role and responsibility to identify clinical outcomes, develop programs to ensure positive results, put metrics in place, and train teams. With all that said, you can imagine that data is the guiding light of my job, but it's actually not one of my strongest suits. As a person with no in-depth data experience, leaning on engineers and data analysts has always been my go-to. But at the same time,
That's Ave. And so now I pass it on to you for questions, thoughts, feedback. Would love to hear how you, like the kind of practices you do at your company, what has worked for you, what resonates, data horror stories, I'm here for it, in Slack, or in person. So thank you for your time.
Thank you all so much for coming out. And as Yuri said, please post any questions, comments in Slack. Yuri will be in there following up with all of you and making sure that we get those questions answered. And thanks for coming out. We will see you at the next sessions.